X I'm going to start out with is actually the X5. I do have this deleted, but I don't have it mastered. It's been a while since I played with this particular battle mech, and it's got some interesting quirks, and I saw a build yesterday that I want to give it a go, and that was another Cicada pilot. Quick shout out, there can only be one. I ran into him on my last match last night, but he had an X5 that had 2 LRM5s and 4 medium lasers. Pretty simple, right? And you're like, that's really nothing ooh-ah about it. But the unique thing about this is once you go down to the quirks, energy range, plus 20%. So, right off the bat, awesome. 10% laser duration, less phase time. Medium laser range, plus 20. So, I now have 40% medium laser range on this. Medium laser duration, 10. So now I have 20 laser. Anyways, you start to get this energy heat gen, missile cooldown of 25%. So anyways, I'm going to give it a go. And, you mean mech builds for those without tons of money? Yeah, this just happens to be the X5. I just figured we'd give it a go. But anyways, some quick shout outs to you guys. Hopefully you are having a good night. And I just want to say thank you guys for the retweets. If you do have Twitter, want to help me spread the word of the mech porn. Let's see, did Twitter send me an email notification? Twitter. Oh, you've been doing so good. Thank you. Also, I figured if I strategically wore some stuff, I'm wearing the Alpha Lance t-shirt. Oh yeah. I figured it was a good time. Also got a haircut. I actually did this myself. My wife helped get the back nice and trimmed to trim the beard. Just needed to go a little bit more aerodynamic, and it was getting a little crazy. I don't really like too long hair. I don't know. It's just me. But anyways, guys, hopefully you are having a good time. Let's go ahead and hop in here. Or do I have a message first? Let's see really quick. Must be a message. Mediocre. I have no idea what that is. It's asking about something, I don't know. Anyways, so let's go ahead and hop in here and get going. I do have radar deprivation and LRM5 cooldown and medium laser cooldown. So I could take medium laser range. That'll give it a 50%, 52.5% boost with quirks, which would put that at times 0.525. 141. That put it at 411 meters effective on the medium lasers. So I'd be able to have medium lasers that shoot at 822, technically 823.5, but you know. No, what I'm going to try to do, Kippers, tonight is I'm going to actually try to find builds that, instead of like sort of not joke builds or gimmicky builds, but just try to find something that maybe based on its quirks, or maybe just based on, you know, my own personal sort of relationship with the mech as far as being able to play it, my experience, yeah, relationship, because we used to date, is find something that you know, works just in general. So we'll just have to go from there. But yeah, hopefully you guys are having a good night. Quick shout out to SJR. They won their MBT match. I was watching that earlier. I have a feeling MBT is gonna be exciting. It's a little disappointed, SJR, if you're watching. Any of you guys are. I was expecting clan, you know, proper, you know, dialect, but I was dismayed when that was not the case. That's what I feel like. MBT, if you're gonna stream, like, it should be required that you have to speak as like an RP sort of factor. I think that would be hilarious, right? Thank you, Joseph Holm, Suz Brent, Oogie Plex, a few others out there. Silly Putty, thanks for the retweet, bro. What's going on, Savardius? How you doing, man? Opie, what is that? What mech is that, man? It's up, Spyro.
What's up, man?
Just streaming some MWO. You're in channel right now. I just figured. Say hello. See what you're up to.
Much. Here's the storm right now.
Why is my water bottle leaking? Damn you, water bottle. Big Zach. I mean, really and honestly, I'd have to time it. I don't think wait times are that long. I mean, solo drops, it doesn't take too long, at least for me. And I can do a stopwatch next time. Actually, I'll do that. I'll get my iPhone here. Let's get this stopwatch. I'll hit start, see how long it takes. But I honestly don't think it's too bad. Group, I don't know, but. Sort of a horrible map to be on with this, but I'll make it work. And Demonoth, yeah, X5, bro. Red shirt, what's going on? Hey, what's going on, guys? See you in the middle. Wow, look at that, 405 meters. See how heat is. Again, I do have this deleted. I'm just working on the mastery. Figured try a little different setup. 133 kph. I think I have an XL300 in this. I didn't go with the 295, even though I was thinking about it. Small mech in a big mech fight. Enemy UAV. Shoot missiles at it. Actually, I think that's the first time I've ever done that. I keep hitting the wrong button. That's what I meant to do.
How's your night been, man?
Good. Just started. Well, at least MWO night. My wife made some white chicken chili. It was awesome. Had a really good workout. I do have BAP on this, guys. I want to say 2.5 tons of ammo as well. Yeah, that was over. Let's go push out here. Push, push, push. Oh god. I just blinded you guys. Behind us. So much negativity in game. I don't really get it, man.
Going on now?
Oh, just people, you know, blaming their teammates and retards, all that fun stuff. Just because, you know, that helps the situation. Something going G7? I don't know what it was. It was going G7. And there it is. I would say this map is just really, really difficult as well, too. I mean, one little mistake you push in on Therma and... I mean, the separation, I mean, especially on that one, they had 4 guys that, like, flanked. And if one team commits, and now they have a 12v8 or 12v6 or whatever situation, the team with the bigger numbers wins on that. And so it's one of those where we've seen it time and time again, like... If you can't take the middle and the enemy team's already there, don't try to force your way in. And, well, end result is the end result. But, alright. Wish that was a little... Well, that wasn't bad. First one. Only 10,000 more XP to go. Let's go on Kira, MC, RDX, the green tank. Demonoth. I'm actually, well, think about this, Demon. On this setup, really, I mean, you could go 2 streak 2s, or you could do like 2 SRM4s or whatever. But with how much range you got with the medium lasers, and you know, the LRM5s, the tonnage you're dumping into them, and you know, I think I did like 2.5 tons of ammo just because the heat is so efficient anyway. It's one of those things where, you know, now if I run up into a lot of ECMX, then I still have my medium lasers, and you know. Need a feature to block all maps. Me personally, I don't agree. I wouldn't like that. I think me and Spiral, we were talking about this, is if, because then you're just giving more player choice, which we already have enough, which creates so many problems. I almost feel that the in-between could be the voting. So there's a perception of choice, but I mean, if it may have to just put you on a map that you don't want. Same thing with game modes, right? Like, it's one of those things where, like, I can get some people's argument is like, well, if I knew what map, I could take a better suited mech instead of just an all-around, which you're probably going to take an all-around anyways, but anyways, I don't know. Well, I think it's part of game balance, you not knowing what map you're going to get. I mean,
the problem with that is that it also kind of caters to the extremes. Like, if you could basically take out every single hot map in the game just by voting it out, then you're going to equip your mechs with pretty much, you know, a very hot build, because you can just kind of anticipate that there's going to be more cold maps than hot maps. So it kind of skews builds towards whatever like map you're kind of targeting, which, you know, is fine in like a competitive setting where they pretty much know going in what they want to do, but from an average player setting, it's just not fun.
Hey, you guys want to push pass? Maybe, yes, yes. I'm going. Really, I'm the sort of forerunner here, which is good and bad. Hellbringer, top of platform. I don't have the weight to push myself, but... Enemy UAV. And enemy units. I just can't. We can push over and overwhelm them, but just... There we go. It's got ECM, or AMS. Let's take the platform. Let's take it. Got a thunderbolt up here on the platform. There's guys right over that ridge. Fuggles, look to your right. Everything's happening underneath. I don't think we should pop a UAV here. No reason. Come behind him. Ah, it is what it is. What's going on, Hefe? How you doing, man? Mandy?
Hey, what do I want to play tonight?
What's going on, Gamma Ray? You know, I think it's tough too, because when you look at White quirks away from the scene, and remember before, and you know, when you're looking at a mech and a mech's performance, it usually came into, one, hardpoint locations, the tonnage of the mech, was it jump jet capable, did it have ECM and stuff like that, physical geometry of the mech, the shape, and, you know, when you add all those things in, you know, basically what happens when another mech that comes out the exact same tonnage but better hardpoints, or something that's 5 tons more or whatever. It's sort of like when we look at the Black Knight that just came out. You know, people are like, oh, I just wish it had more weapon quirks, when it already has so many weapons and it can carry a lot of, you know, double heat sinks. And so is it one of those things where, you know, it's like, oh, well, what does it do different than the Grasshopper, and what does it do different than Thunderbolt, and this and that? And that's where I think that the tough question is what is outside, maybe even than what currently is in game, what is outside to distinguish one, you know, like if we had another 75 tonner that was energy based, what other than those attributes, because there might just be a clear, you know, this one just performs better, or is that just the nature of the beast and it is what it is? I mean, and those things, Inkle, what? X5 is awesome. What are you talking about? That's one of the things you sort of have to think outside the box is, and yeah, I mean, you know, weapon quirks and small things like that, structure, armor, protection, mobility. Okay, cool. But is there anything else like decreased crit chance, or I don't know? Just like I said, I'm sort of speaking off the cuff here.
The issue always comes back around to pretty much that everything in the game currently is just on a single linear scale, which is pretty much just the firepower scale. And it's kind of gotten to a point where, you know, it is a valid point to pretty much say, what is a Black Knight's alpha when compared to the 60 and 50 alphas of Direwolves and Timberwolves out there? It's just one of those systems where, like, you just chase firepower and that's the only thing that you do, then you essentially establish an arms race, and you kind of already see that with like things like the Black Knight.
But that's what I'm sort of saying is, so what can be talked, what can be discussed that's different enough. Ooh, shit, hold on.
Well, I think it always comes back around to the core systems. Like, the thing is that there's a very good reason why firepower is on...
Got a Battlemaster Foxtrot by himself? Sorry.
Okay.
Oh, and he's not by himself.
There's currently a good reason why firepower is pretty much the end-all be-all of the game.
Oh my god, am I getting shoved from there?
I mean, like, you know, mobility pretty much being a null point once you get, you know, 2x experience. Various, like, systems in play and game modes in play that kind of just incentivize going out and killing people faster than, you know, the opposing team. Also, just the fact that high alpha plays.
Enemy UAV, G4. Keep going.
Okay. The only legitimate way to really kind of bring firepower to the table in this game. Like, there's no kind of differentiation between high alpha and DPS play, because high alpha just kind of rules them all. So it's one of those things where, like, ideally you do want to think outside the box, and, you know, for example, your critical chance, like, I would love for criticals to be a thing in this game, but in the current core mechanics of the game, why go for something with extra crit chances when a 50-60 alpha can just shear off an entire torso much better? So, to a degree, they do have to think outside the box, but on the other hand, they also have to consider the core systems that are already implemented into the game, and what can they do to improve the core systems to kind of allow themselves to have a much more varied field and kind of get rid of this linear firepower scale, because I think that's like really the thing that kind of bites all these mechs in the ass now. As long as you chase a single firepower trait and that's the only thing that matters, then that's the only thing that people are going to look at, because that's pretty much just what issue with the Black Knight is now. Does not have as many offensive quirks as a Thunderbolt, so therefore it is not valid mech, because Thunderbolt has higher hard points, better quirks, and even, you know, for the most part, better survivability, because it's a bit more maneuverable given its better weight.
Well, and that's what I was saying is like I think in that case, what you'd have to do is you'd have to sort of step back and sort of break down. Mechs aren't just weapons, equipment. You know, it's the breakdown of, okay, well, actuators would have to come into play, other nuances like that, to where health of equipment and weapons would have to be upped and increased or distinguished. I mean, there would have to be other stuff like that, but that's what I'm saying is like what other things could be introduced and or even altered to make that, you know, where it's not always the end all be all, and you could use those little things to distinguish one variant from another or chassis between themselves.
That's definitely what I find at least very encouraging about the PTS that they just had. I know a lot of people don't like it because, you know, there was no weapon quirks and there's obvious clan imbalances and whatnot. But the thing is that weapon quirks is considered a mutator as far as design terms go. Like, they're not a core system that everything is built off of. Instead, they are something that kind of sits on top that kind of mutates things off of the core systems. But the problem is that it was a mutator that kind of just ran away with itself to where it pretty much became the deciding factor for a lot of the inner sphere designs. So it's good to see that they're kind of at least getting back to basics and seeing where the playing field was. I hope that they did get a lot of good metrics from that
But
PTS.
I mean, even when it comes to clan ice balancing, the thing is, if let's take the gridiron for example. In the idea of the gridiron, right? The idea of the gridiron is, okay, let's just say you left the crazy cooldown quirks for the Gauss rifle on there, right? Let's just say you did that, and maybe the medium pulse laser range and stuff. But because it has those massive quirks, then in theory, it would have to have stuff taken away, right? Either maneuverability, maybe a little bit of survivability, and hear me out. But here's the thing is, you couldn't do that in the current system because the clan mechs weapons are, you know, just overall just better, and, you know, some of these mechs are just straight up like the go-to. So it's almost like you had to buff some of these mechs up so ridiculously high with firepower quirks to bring them even sort of even kill with some of the clan mechs. So if you were to implement sort of this trade-off, like, hey, you get weapon quirks, but stuff gets sort of taken away from you, which how that should be, well then clan mechs, it would be just like almost all take on some of the bigger ones, Stormgrove, Timby, and stuff like that. So I almost feel like you're at this point where where do you feel, you know, or where does Paul feel, you know, what a good balance is the weapons are. You know, do we want 90, 100 plus alphas being out there? Where do you want that to be? And then how do you change that? How do you alter it? Because if you hit one thing, does it have a dramatic effect? Like, for instance, if you were to hit whatever it is, ER medium laser heat or heat gen or stuff like that, you'll start to think that also inadvertently affects light mechs of the clans that can only field, you know, a few energy weapons and then that's it. So like I said, it's a big, you know, discussion topic.
That's why I was encouraged to at least see that, despite how lopsided the PTS was, the fact that they were at least looking into those things was at least encouraging. And I did like what they were doing to the clan system to kind of give a bit more of a trade-off, so to speak, with a lot of those meta configurations. But it's just one of those things where, you know, it has to be dialed in, and I definitely think that a much more complicated problem than just looking purely at weapons. I think it has to be a combination of the quirks, it has to be a combination of the weapons, but it also has to kind of go back to the core systems and build a decent foundation that they can kind of build on top of,
Well,
instead of trying to compensate for.
I mean, even like, okay, so like, let's just say this entire discussion, if you had like bullet points, the first thing would be like, okay, what are some of the underlying systems? You know, we were talking before about like, unfortunately right now, the engine basically what it does is it has a multiplier, so whatever engine in the tonnage of the mech multiplies whatever the base stats are for like XL, DXL, and turn rate and stuff like that. And turn speed, torso turn speed, that's why the bigger the engine, the more agile mech is. Well, And that also causes issues, especially with some of the clan mechs having such big XL engines that they're so I would say that would be one thing, is either you desync that or create a way to where you can set on a per chassis level. And also from like player perspective too, is you would then not have these massive nerfs as far as quirks, right? Because all they're doing is they're just sort of setting the base foundation, adjusting those. Because if the Timberwolf, me and you were talking about, is like, I think with the XL360 of a Black Knight or Orion, let's just say max engine here, the Timberwolf is still 15 some odd % faster than those mechs. So not only does it have amazing potential firepower and heat capacity, which again goes with firepower, it's even more maneuverable than the Black Knight and the Orion. So not only are the Orion and Black Knight chasing, after this, they're just not able to compete. So it's one of those things where I would say that would have to be adjusted. I would even say, what are the benefits of the standard or the single heatsink, double heatsink, and then the clan double, and looking at distinguishing those. They're equal right now, but they're not. The clan double heatsink is superior because it has 2 crit slots compared to 3. They're the exact same stats, but 2 crit slots for clan mechs that have more payload space and have more crit space is just a huge benefit and a boon to, So, if you were to break down bullet points like this and just sort of say like, and that's how massive this sort of idea of how do you balance some of the underlying systems and structures that's sort of out of balance. They weren't out of balance per se, maybe prior to clans, but as we get more and more mech chassis, you start to see some of the cracks. Fix those. But then mech balance, across the board, and then IS and clan, I mean, in theory, what we're basically saying is an Orion and a Black Knight need to compete against a Timberwolf. Now, maybe not in all scenarios. Maybe open field, as far as I can see, the Timberwolf is still like, gonna be amazing. But so that's a tough thing,
Kind of going back to your entire increased crit chances, I would love to see something like clan mechs have less crit hit points, so they get critted out a little bit more to kind of compensate for the fact that they're smaller weapons, but maybe they're just built more frailly, and that's why they have lower tonnage, lower crit spaces, and all that fun stuff.
Sorry, I just got shot from the rear and then
One contacted.
That's cute.
Charlie.
Just trying to be annoying here, but not quite going in my favor. I don't want to dive over here and then not be able to back up here. I'm actually really enjoying these LRM5s on this damn thing.
I actually like playing with LRMs on medium size mechs and lower.
Oh, you're screwed, dude.
Current state of LRMs, a lot of LRM plays kind of being in the right place at the right time to make sure that they're outside ECM and whatnot.
Well, I feel like one of the main problems with LRMs is the weight, the tonnage you have to put into them. So, I mean, 5s are one of those, like, nice little, right there on the edge where they're not too heavy. But, I mean, they don't do a ton of damage here.
I mean, the big perk with LRMs have always just been that, out of all the long-range weapons in the game, they are actually, like, the most weight efficient out of them. Just that they're also, through the current mechanics, one of the most inaccurate ones as well, which is why not many people take them.
I do like the indirect capabilities of LRMs. Like, I know that's always sort of convoluted, because, you know, skill and this and that, and...
I don't know, I think that LRMs take a skill, it's just a different skill. It's more about...
Well, it's positioning.
Oh yeah,
You're
it's
overrunning
completely
it.
about
I mean, and
positioning.
I have 2 LRM5s and 4 medium lasers. It's not like I'm boating, and, you know, it's always funny, like, oh, fucking LRM boats, but yeah, like, you know...
Enemy AV and Fox Stacks. Enemy AV, Fox Stacks.
I'm 200 meters away from my targets engaging. It's more of just a nuisance. They can't, you know, get away sort of thing, and that's sort of how I use, at least with this build. I saw it yesterday, and I was like, I'm gonna give that a go. Where'd you go, little dude? Yeah, there you are.
At that point, you're not really trying to be, you know, a big damage mech so much as a suppression
Oh, and
mech.
it's, yeah, it's a DPS, just sort of annoyance, and they're gonna have to deal with me, or they're dead. Clutch. Got him. Spartan, what's up? Yeah, we give all of our premium time codes to the other streamers so they can give them out. Alright, how close am I? Alright, 5k. So we're halfway. You know. Yeah, Nurx, the Hunchback J is... can be quite lethal. So, you know. And you know, and that's another thing too, Spiral, is like, since Quirks came in the, you know, into the scene, and prior to the clan invasion, or, you know, clan invasion, but clan mechs, we really haven't seen, you know, how, if everything's stripped away, like what happened, you know, like, let's just say PTS, what if you just stripped everything away? And then, I know this sounds crazy, I know everyone's like, well, I can tell you what's going to happen. My point being is, if you strip everything away and then do it sort of like on layers, where you say, okay, one of the things we want to do is this, and then boom, do another PTS. And that, to me, you know, that's where I sort of wish we had just quicker turnarounds and just say, hey, we're going to do PTS, maybe in a few days we do another one. But here's the crux of it all. I mean, they are a small studio, and, you know, how much time can be dedicated, you know, just turn around. So it's one of those things where I think just I, as a player, and everyone else out there, has to just sort of be patient, you know, on some of this stuff.
Oh yeah. That's just generalization with any kind of game development. Like as consumers, you can consume product a lot faster than you can create it, and it's just kind of always a problem with all kinds of game development.
Well, and let's just say ideas. How many ideas can thousands of people come up with in an hour compared to like one lead designer or whatever it is? Like, I'm just saying, like, everybody has an opinion, an idea. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I do, you do, everyone does. So it's one of those things where it's really tough. Well, I mean, like I said, I think there's a lot of smart people. There's a lot of eyes on the game as far as at the heart, most people that are posting just want either their ideas are sort of voiced to be heard, or maybe they do have a good idea. And I mean, look at Ghosty. I mean, Ghosty, I do think there's a better solution out there. I mean, I don't know off the top of my head, but it's one of those things where how do you create a system that sort of curbs player behavior? Granted, Ghosty right now, when it was first implemented, the idea was it was to stop large amounts of large weapon boating and being out of alpha. Sort of like, Beef in his Dire Star videos. Granted, he usually dies after 2 shots, right? So he can still do it, but then he dies. So it's sort of like a gimmicky build, but it did do that. But that's to say, so how else can you stop that? Well, there are other alternatives to that. So it's one of those things where, maybe it's time to sort of reevaluate. And my biggest problem with Ghosty has always been the lack of communication to the player and understanding. But as long as that's clear and concise and to the point, and it does sort of curb the behavior, which is, yes, you can stick 8 or 9 or whatever large lasers, but this is why you don't want to do it, sort of thing. And it's not just some ninja slap in the face, but it's clearly understood, oh, okay, so if I do that, I understand that I'm gonna die in a ball of fire, sort of thing.
I mean, OST is such a complicated thing. I think that definitely served its purpose when it was mostly the inner sphere designs, because they actually catered the system to it. I think that the same people who kind of had problems with system back during the inner sphere design, it kind of compounded on the issues that were already there once clans kind of came about, and it was just so much easier to circumvent the things that supposed to curb the behavior, just basically combining large and medium lasers to circumvent the ghost heat on medium or large laser boating. But, the entire gauze PVC, the combining gauze and energy weapons to circumvent 30 points of damage that they wanted to kind of cater ghost heat to originally.
But I mean, and again, going back to that though, is as a player we can circumvent it right now. I mean, you can take a direwolf with 2 Gauss, 2 large pulse, 6 ER mediums, and because there's nothing tying in the Gauss to, because Gauss doesn't create heat, right, to the mediums, you can, or a large pulse, you can fire, and that's the thing is, so you'd have to create a system that I would say pretty much affects the weapons per se. And what I mean by that is you'd almost like a value of each weapon, and so that when you fire these 2 combinations, even though it doesn't cause heat, it's draining more power. So I don't know. It's just something to the fact of then there is no way where you can get around it.
And that's why I say that the problem itself. I mean, the problem has always existed, and that's why you saw Gauze PPC meta be so powerful even before Clan Invasion, was because it was the best combination of weapons that was able to circumvent the ghost heat stuff. But I think that the clans basically compounded on the problem because it was just so easy for direwolves to pretty much put anything they frickin' want and get these 100-point alphas relatively easily. And even if they were to, use the existing ghost heat system and pretty much say, oh, instead of 6 ER meads that, pretty much does almost, 60 some odd damage onto itself, we're going to basically make it sure you can only fire 3 or 4 of them at a time. Like, it still doesn't, prevent the problem of them mixing and matching weapons to basically circumvent that, and because it's so easy for the clans to circumvent it, it's just a hard problem to kind of track down without actually going back and kind of iterating on at least not so much the design, but probably the intentions of the system initially, just to cover, what was the problem with it right now. MechWarrior Gauze has always been a 1 heat weapon. The big trade-off with Gauze has always been that kind of a heavy weapon to carry as far as ballistics go, and it's a very frail device, because even in tabletop, it's easy to crit out and it does 20 damage just like it does in this game.
You guys should have good shots on him from up above. So I gotta move out. Oh, you're a streak, Mad Dog. So instead of looking at it as a heat, I know the whole power value thing has been tossed out there, but I do think it would be in sort of an elegant solution to where, a Gauss rifle would have X amount of power draw. So the idea is that when you're firing that combined with other weapons, it's drawing power away from your heat sinks, so they're not as efficient. Maybe even like armor muscle, so you're slower in attributes. When you start breaking down like that, I think it's, there's definitely some solutions out there.
Yeah.
So it still would affect your heat, but it also affects some other things.
I'm personally not a fan of the heat system, only because it affects laser weapons more than ballistic and missile weapons. Like, if you look at the current system, it punishes people on the heat scale. And the problem with that is that you see that ballistics are kind of, boated, and even though ballistics and missiles have ghost heat values, don't see anyone ever really caring about that. Like, you see splat dogs just triggering all of them. You see dire stars that just, mount as many ACs as they can, don't even care about the ghost heat. The only ballistic weapon that you actually care about the ghost heat for is the AC-20, and only because it's kind of a severe punishment. But aside from that, you can pretty much ignore it. I'm personally more of a favor of they, instead of going for heat, they went for something more like the cooldowns, because DPS is something that kind of affects all weapons universally, and as long as you keep it in the heat, it's going to punish laser weapons more than it's punishing any of the other weapons in the system.
Yeah, keep talking, sorry, that was me. I fired LRMs within my minimum. It was stupid.
All good.
Like,
Yeah, I mean,
ooh, that hurt.
Barton, you also bring up a good point. He's basically talking about TT variable heat scales and stuff like that. And this game, there's also this game is under a binary heat scale, and it's still kind of adapting tabletop values. So you're really seeing like people boating a bunch of weapons that, if you were to look at BattleTech proper or even previous MechWarrior games, it's something you would never do, just because of how the heat systems in both games, tend to penalize you, and it's a design decision on their part to pretty much keep it binary. And I'm not necessarily for a complete adaptation of what they had in the tabletop, but I do think that they were going to keep the binary heat system. They could probably better skew our heat system to maybe veer further away from tabletop and adapt it to kind of better hit
fire on Kilo.
Better hit the like spirit of tabletop without necessarily like getting those values in.
Thank you, guys.
Storm Crows and some other stuff advancing from Sigma.
Back where evidently before, if climbed the heat scale too much, your speed went down, but also you had a little bit of reticle flicker to kind of account for more difficult targeting that the tabletop usually has you. It's not as punishing as tabletop is, because I think like
Epi guys.
Tabletop start getting modifiers to hit and negative speed once you get above like 5 heat out of a 30-point heat scale. It definitely, you know, does the job.
So very focused on Mad Dog.
Tiny. I saw this build yesterday on another cicada running pilot, and now I did kill him in my 2B, but I was like, dude, I'm gonna try that. Like, that's a thing. Oh my god, these locusts are so damn nimble. They're like, yoink. Oh my gosh, just kill him, guys. Kill him.
Be right back, folks.
That locust is smart.
Go for his legs. Just go for the legs. And it is interesting. I don't know. I've been having some fun with it. I'm mastering it. I've got, I don't know. It's like 5,000 XP to go. So I mean, considering it's not too shabby, right? So that should have taken me over. Let's see, Thunder Max, thank you for the friend invite, man. And by the way, for those that are watching, maybe you're new, make sure to toss me a friend invite in game, SEAN space LANG, and I'll get to it as soon as possible. Just working on eluding or mastering my X5s. Just trying the setup that I saw. It's actually been working pretty well, and just going from there. So got about 2,000 more XP, and this will be mastered, and then I'm going to move on to the Cicada 3C. That's going to be interesting, and it's happening. This is the build I'm using currently with X5. Obviously, you could substitute this with, you know, an SRM4 easily. I mean, it's pretty much hot. Well, yeah, it's hot swappable with 2.5 tons as well. So you could do that if you desired. But actually, you know, the 2 LRM5s, it's actually pretty effective. And just going from here, so. Fireblood, hey Sean, how would you feel if they increased flaws of the Client XL versus standard? This is actually something that goes a little bit deeper. To sort of answer, I feel that the knife edge that is the ISXL sort of needs a little bit of a cushion, but this sort of goes back to how a mech dies. Like, should it kill a IS mech right off the bat, or The only trade-off right now for an XL is that it gives you more tonnage, whereas a Clan XL, not only does it give you the tonnage, it also gives you the survivability. Obviously, you don't want to make it so that ISXLs are just like Clan, because then it would almost void it would void the standard. But what if you did a, again, advanced sort of crit system to where, or HP system where the side torsos sort of factor in a little bit extra HP or something from an XL engine, and so a standard engine is very tanky and stuff like that. I don't know, there's multiple ways, but Clan survivability with the XLs I think is fine as far as like how that works. It's just IS XLs are, you know, just inferior because of that. Now, when you lose a side torso, most Clan mechs and builds are symmetrical in nature, and if you lose half your mech, you're usually losing like half your heat sinks or weapons, so it sort of counts. But I'm all for critical hits happening to engines. Obviously, engines and stuff have to have more HP, and crit hits have to sort of factor into where maybe you take a crit hit to your engine and you generate more heat, or your engine's hit so your mech slows down in speed, or you take an actuator hit to your right hip and so your turn rate gets slowed a little bit. I'm all for these things. It would just take, what Spiral was saying earlier, sort of a reevaluation of how a mech is comprised, and then how it's picked apart slowly, you know, and the nuances of, and you know, it's definitely possible. You know, it's just, you know, that would take a sort of an entire sort of look at a mech and its systems going from there.
Get back. And to kind of go back around to the PTS, one of the things that's wipe all those you know, weapons clean, and they're starting to get base values. Maybe it's, you know, time that kind of discussions start happening around the community to kind of you know, point to this as something that people actually want the game to develop in. Because I mean, I completely agree with you, Phil. There has to be different ways that mechs have to kind of be unique to each other, and the more ways we can kind of try to expand the game, you know, or the devs try to factor in all these different systems and how they interact with each other, more kind of variance you can have. Like, if crit systems actually matter, and it's not just about raw firepower, then you can have, say, like the Black Knight be about, you know, raw firepower, where, say, the Orion is more about crit seeking or various other aspects. Like, more of these base systems are pretty much you know, looked into and actually made relevant, the further you can kind of expand the field on. And I think one of the strengths of, you know, MWO is that premium game, if the developers choose to, they can always go back and expand on these systems if they want to, as long as there's desire to. So hopefully those ideas kind of excite more than just, you know, helping yourself to expand the game. We'll see. Yours, the Kingfisher, is actually an Omnimech, so it will probably, if it's ever included in MWO, have the standard engine hard-locked to the system, which might be an interesting thing, especially if they make, you know, the side torsos fairly prominent on it.
Green Tank, I wouldn't. I mean, and that's sort of, my point is, there's so much customization in these mechs, sometimes that takes away from the flavors of others. You know, like, the fact that the Summoner has Pharaoh instead of Indo, or that the, you know, like, that's fine. It just needs then other attributes that overcome the fact of it doesn't have that payload space for weapons, or the fact that, you know, and that's the thing, is like, that's one of the things lacking right now, you know. So
the more you basically whitewash everything into a homogeneous pile,
that's where you get the clans right now. I mean, what I'm saying is, like, the Timberwolf, that's why you get min-max, because well, this hard point location has 2 energy and it's superior, better than the other Omnipod, so why even bother? And then, you know, the Jaguar is the same thing. It's a 65-ton version of the Timberwolf, basically. You know, so there's no nuances or difference other than the shape of the mech, the tonnage of the mech, and hardpoint locations. You know.
And that's you know, pretty much what I'm getting at. Like looking into something a bit more relevant is going to be the Orion 2C, because it's going to be the exact same tonnage as the Timberwolf with you know, the ability to equip Clan XL plus all the trimmings, but you know, it's got low slung weapons. It can't customize the hardpoints. So what's the point of that compared to the Timberwolf? Like, if you basically just allow mechs like the Summoners and various other mechs to pretty much just be like every other mech out there, it's going to turn into an arms race just like every other thing. Bigger win is to try to find a purpose to...
Well, it's almost like
niche.
Weapons have to, you know, be sort of de-emphasized or kept or sort of debuffed a little bit, but then something else has to be a factor. I mean, the game modes do come into this entire talk as well, guys. I don't want to just... It's
an accumulation of everything. It's
multiple
there's no
layers on a
silver
cake.
bullet in any of
No,
this.
it's so many layers on a cake. And, you know, that's also how they stack.
And that's why, like, it's good to see them stripping all of, you know, the mutators away and looking at just at least the core systems, even if, you know, it's a bit of a shock value to it. I'm hoping that the long run, that kind of mentality, like, leads to a much better rounded game from the ground up.
F8, F7. I just took a full alpha. That hurt. Retreating back to you guys. Go pass through the arch, guys. Ooh, well, that could get me killed. Probably not gonna get that. He doesn't have radar depth. Okay. Enemy UAV.
Barton, people are always going to min-max no matter what.
Yeah, min-max doesn't go away. That's a part of mech warrior. Like, that should be... Customization should be a thing. Like, that's...
Yeah.
You could take away customization and... Yeah.
I think that, you know, the bigger win isn't so much like getting rid of min-maxing, because it's failed problem. You can't do it. You just simply can't do it. But what you can do is, you know, develop a system to which no one thing can get everything. And so, like, while every mech can have the ability to min-max in different ways. And, you know, kind of go into what Paul was saying with that kind of four-pillared system that he's essentially thinking of. As long as they find a way to pretty much make all four versions, like the mobility and the information warfare in particular, relevant to the game, you could have, like, 50-ton mech like a Centurion that might be better at mobility, whereas, or sorry, not mobility, but protection, whereas the Enforcer with its jump jets and whatnot has more of a mobility hitch to it. So the min-maxing is definitely around, it's still there, but it's catering to different roles on the battlefield, which is unfortunately something that I think the current game doesn't really do all too well, because it's kind of just, you know, on a linear firepower scale. So if they find some way of kind of varying the field, no, there's still going to be min-maxing around, but it at least is a much more varied field for what you min-max for.
I just ran into... There's the Stormcrow. Found the Stormcrow. About to not have a good day. Dang it. Oh my god, the Alpha. Laser just drill CT.
Behind us.
It's gonna kill you. Astro, run! That thing has 3 ER large. Why would you do this?
Plan or IS design?
Yeah, it's a Cicada 2B.
Oof.
I cringe. You don't know what you're missing out on.
Run hot or die.
Something like
In his case, very, very hot. Silent Rune, I would say Forest Colony is a very well-rounded map that can definitely be used as a sniper's paradise, depending on where you engage everyone. I think people tend to like to engage by ringing around the kind of large pillared structures. So if you get into one of those kind of fights, I don't think that a sniper is going to serve you that well. But you try to engage them in the water or in the core forest area, like snipers do very well in those areas.
one more match. Yeah, I don't know. It's like people have a mentality that like alpha, you shouldn't be able to alpha. And it's like, what? Like,
Yeah.
min-maxing shouldn't be a thing. It's like customization is min-maxing. All you're basically doing, I mean, if you break it down in simple terms, is you're maximizing your potential to do damage to an enemy mech while negating their ability to return fire. I mean, that's basically what you're doing in a mech. So, and some people, it's, I think sometimes just it comes down to is they just don't want to admit that, or they don't want to learn, or they don't want to use, or that, maybe something, and some players are just generally better, and, they run into those and they get, hammered with them, and they just, but the problem right now in the current sort of meta of the game, or current sort of min-max, is because of, clan mechs and just laser weapons across the board are so, I mean, they're just so strong. And you have, look at, even on IS side with the quirks, what mechs are the top dogs? List them out. Guaranteed most of them are going to be energy based. So it's one of those things where, that wouldn't go away. Like even in a balanced system where clan and IS are balanced in albeit different ways, but or even chassis and variants, you're still going to have where a particular loadout or setup on a particular mech is potentially better than one of its other counterparts, just because of it could be the slightest thing of just shape of the mech. It could be the slightest thing of it has, well, instead of those 2 hard points being up top, that other one has 1 and then 1, so the one with 2 up top is better. It is sort of tough, when it comes to that. So the biggest thing is that you just don't want one dominating, min-max sort of layout and setup.
Never bought into the idea that people are basically complaining because they just aren't as skilled as the other person. I think what they usually are complaining about is that they want more varied ways to play, and due to the mechanics of the game, sometimes they don't have the ability to play the game the way that they want.
Well, I get that, but the argument would be, yeah, you may be right, we wish those other weapon systems but that's not the case. So either you got to adapt and overcome. I mean, in the current state, like or just realize that that's what you're going to be facing up against. And I'm not saying that's you used to have that problem in reality when it was try hard. Like, remember in that part of the community, it was just, oh, nothing but try hard cheese and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, so there was that going on. Now, granted, there was also player behavior involved in some of the reaction, but I get what you're saying, is like, some people wish that the ability, but there are nuances to MWO. Even if weapon balances were closer, there are nuances of why would you take that particular loadout on that particular mech. And it's because it has high mounts, or the ability you can do right side heavy. Now, someone in what you're talking about may run it completely different, and ergo it may not be as efficient. So there's always going to be that line between min-max and efficiency to, you know, just sort of the whims of, I guess, having multi sort of role, like multi roles in MWO are very difficult to pull off. You know, like Centurion, right. Running a ballistic missile and energy is very, very tough. One, tonnage. You know, that's I would say the number one thing. Two, you know, the synergy between the weapons. You know, and three, survivability, because if you want to take those weapons and have all three, guess what? You're going to have an XL, and if you have an XL, you're going to be vulnerable. And then, you know, not to mention it's not synergistic. It's so there are other factors that go in that. So.
Well, it's also because of just how MWO is kind of structured as a game. I mean, the reason why you saw multi-rolled combat in BattleTech proper is always because, you know, going back to the kind of heat scale thing, the heat scale was so punishing that strapping on specialist mechs and having the heat sinks to basically support specialist mechs ran counterproductive to maximizing on a mech's firepower.
But also, in the tabletop, a Timberwolf and Orion had the same hitboxes. They had the same shape, so that wasn't a factor. You didn't have the location of the weapons a factor. So that actually helped the Orion out in regards. You know what I'm saying? Like, those are things that, you know.
But in the context of specialized roles as opposed to non-specialized roles, like, want to basically go for specialized roles in MWO because the system itself is catered to these massive alphas that, you know, you wouldn't be able to get away with in tabletop, whereas in tabletop, like, at least within the spirit of the rules, the trade-off between heat sinks, even double heat sinks, and weapons was that, you know, in order to run heat neutral builds in tabletop, you had to severely cut into your ability to essentially give massive amounts of firepower. Like, an Awesome was considered to be a very well-built, specialized mech that ran cool, and it could only do about 30 heat every 10, or sorry, 30 damage every 10 seconds.
Hey, what's going on?
Whereas, like something in MWO, you got everything from Gauss rifle.
And you can also min-max your heat capacity and dissipation, whereas you could do your you could do that, albeit it is a little bit different. Holy crap! Sub hype, DreadX, right? Sub hype. Thank you, Beck Bro. Thank you for subbing. Ah, we're up to 87. Woo woo. Sorry.
That's just that's just the thing though, is that
context D-line.
System as it's currently implemented caters to people being able to chase these massive weapon synergies and still have the heat capacity to basically tone them down, which in BattleTech proper and even in previous MechWarrior games you weren't really able to effectively do. Because in BattleTech, like, the big trade-off is essentially who ran a specialist mech, like an Awesome set, for example. You are trading overall damage that potentially be brought into play with a mech of that tonnage, trading it for overall heat efficiency on the mech, because a mech like a Zeus actually had a lot more weapons. There were a lot of varied weapons, but it actually had much more capacity to do damage in a single turn, despite the fact that it was similar tonnage. The trade-off is that Zeus was more able to do consistent firepower at all ranges, whereas the Awesome specialized at one range, but the overall damage that the Awesome could do was significantly less than what the Zeus could do because it's boating more weapons, essentially.
I'm listening. I'm just learning.
And that's pretty much the thing, though, is that the way that MechWarrior Online is constructed, and you know, the way that they've essentially catered the game towards that you can equip less, you know, weapons because the recycle times have been cut in half. The heat is on a binary system instead of a punishing, you know, kind of variable heat scale, and also just, you know, people's perpetuation of just loading singular weapons, even with you know, the ghost heat system, how easy it is to get around it, kind of means that chasing all these systems, they just all compound on each other.
Yep.
To the point where, you know, it's
well,
not
it's layers on a cake. That's why some of these are
yeah.
just so dominant.
But even if you know, they were to basically keep like a heat scale the way that they are, you know, playing the game right now, I think that MWO has basically skewed so many of the numbers that you don't really get mechs within the loadout spirit of what, you know, BattleTech, the tabletop, ever was, because just have such a capacity to focus on weapons, whereas in the tabletop, like, one of the core pillars of their kind of mech balance, you know, even when you tried to min-max in tabletop, was that if you tried to build heat-neutral builds, you were going to pretty much cut into your total capacity to do firepower a turn. So while you were more consistent at doing firepower, you also yourself up to where you don't have the potential to do as much damage when someone overheats or when someone leaves themselves open for a massive alpha. So it's just one of those things where, like, I think that because there isn't that nuance in MWO, you also don't have the nuance of, like, the bracket builds like Centurions and various other things, because the system doesn't, you know, really cap out and balance kind of the trade-off between more weapons and more heat sinks, because, you know, even a single, like, kind of illustrate the point, a single medium laser is a single ton, but it generates 3 heat. So in order to create a heat-neutral medium laser, you need 1 ton investment on the laser, but a 2 ton investment on the heat sinks, even with doubles. So, you know, compounded on itself, it really just kind of creates a system where if you wanted heat neutral builds, you had to cut into your firepower, and if you wanted more firepower, you had to cut into your heat efficiency. That's just something that isn't a trade-off in MWO currently.
Yeah, silent. I was like, oh, GTFOs! I was trying to use the missiles in the, you know, sometimes the arc, you know, you can pull it off, but alright guys, that is it for the X5. I actually do really enjoy this setup. I think I died once and we won every single, I don't know. But this is, again, the build with the X5. It's 4 medium and 2 LRM5s. With 2.5 tons of ammo, 3 double 8-sinks, 1 in the engine, XL300. It is running 268 out of 274 armor, and that's mainly from the head. Actually, it's all from the head, this 6. I think I've got headshot once in a cicada, maybe once. It's I'd normally advise taking at least 78 head armor, but chances of getting your head blown off in this thing are so rare. But definitely did enjoy that. So I need to look up who that pilot was who was running this last night. Thank you for the build. I like it. Yeah, Slim. Like I said, something I saw last night had a mimic and try. I was like, interesting. And with these quirks, dude, I mean, 400 meters on your medium lasers, and you saw the firing rate of the missiles. I mean, not too shabby. So it's a setup I like.